Hi guys. Welcome back to CRYPTID'S Den. It truly means a lot to have you here. This channel has grown into something special because of you, and I'd love to see it keep growing together. So don't be shy. Let me know where you're watching from. Leave a comment and share your thoughts. Every little interaction helps more than you know. And if you haven't already, hit that subscribe button. It's the best way to stay connected and support what we're building here. Now, let's get into it. Something saved my life in those woods and told me never to return. I was just 4 when it happened. No one believed me. Hell, I barely remembered it myself until I turned 12. After my parents' ugly divorce, I was sent to live with my grandfather deep in the Catskills. One night, I found an old drawing I had made as a kid. A towering creature, standing in the forest. Underneath, in my own shaky handwriting, told me not to come back. And that's when it started. The feeling that something out there was watching me, remembering me. My cousin Ben and I broke my grandfather's rule and went into the Forbidden Ridge. What we saw wasn't human, and what came after wasn't trying to hurt us. It was warning us. But Ben didn't listen. He wanted proof. So we went back with cameras. And this time we weren't greeted by Ridgewalker. We were hunted by her, the Screecher. She was bigger, louder, and bloodthirsty. And then, like a father breaking up a fight, he appeared again. Not to attack, but to protect. I saw it in his eyes, grief, not rage. And that's when I knew the real monsters aren't what hide in the forest. They're what we refuse to understand. I didn't want to be there. Not in that truck. Not on that road. Not heading toward the house that smelled like old pine and quiet arguments. My mom had barely said a word the entire drive. Just white knuckles on the steering wheel and that twitch in her jaw she got when she was holding something in. I kept my eyes on the trees whipping past. The Catskills were thicker than I remembered. Taller, like they'd grown claws in the time since I'd last seen them. I was 12, too old to cry, but my stomach had that sinking, dead-weight feel, like something inside me already knew this wasn't a summer I'd forget. We pulled up just before sunset. The sky behind the ridge had gone orange, like a warning. Grandpa Luther was already on the porch, standing there with his hands in the pockets of his flannel jacket, like he'd been waiting since the court order came through. He didn't wave. Just nodded once and turned back inside. That was his way. Mom killed the engine. Didn't move. Just sat there, staring at the porch steps like they might swallow her. "Be good," she said quietly. Her voice cracked on the last word. Then she got out, grabbed my duffel from the trunk, and set it on the gravel. No hug. No how. I'll miss you. Just one long look before she got back in the car and drove away. I stood there, shoes crunching on gravel, watching the tail lights disappear around the bend. The house was still the same. Cedar siding grayed with time, a porch swing that creaked even without wind, windows so dusty you could barely see inside. But stepping over the threshold felt different. Like I was crossing into a place time didn't move right. The air was thick with the smell of wood smoke and something older. Earthy, damp, almost sweet. Grandpa didn't say much that first night. He showed me to the room upstairs, my old room apparently, said dinner was at 6 sharp and left me alone. The floorboards groaned under my sneakers. The walls still had that faded wallpaper with the birch trees. There was a dresser with one drawer stuck shut and a window that overlooked the backwoods. And then there was the sketch. I found it folded inside an old box under the bed. The paper was yellowed, edges curled like it had been touched too many times. It was a child's drawing, crude, clumsy. A tall shape scribbled in dark crayon, standing in a mess of crooked trees. Its eyes were just hollow ovals, its arms too long. I didn't remember drawing it, but the handwriting underneath was mine. Baby letters, crooked and wobbly. It read, "He told me not to come back. I stared at that line for a long time. My skin felt tight, like it didn't fit right. The window beside me creaked, even though the glass was shut. The wind outside had stopped moving. Everything felt wrong. Familiar but wrong. That night, I lay in bed and tried not to think about the woods. About how Grandpa had stared at them when we arrived, like they were watching him back. At dinner, he told me one thing, and only once. "Don't go past the tree line out west," he said, his fork still halfway to his mouth. "That ridge is off limits. You hear me?" I nodded. I didn't ask why. The next morning, the house was quiet. Grandpa had already gone out, hunting or chopping wood, probably. I ate a cold waffle from the fridge and wandered the hallway, fingers dragging along the old photos lining the wall. Mom as a teenager, smiling on the porch. My dad before he left. Me as a toddler, clinging to a plastic dinosaur in front of the same house. But one picture had been turned around, face to the wall. I didn't flip it. Something about it made my spine itch. The knock on the door came around noon. It was Ben. He stood there grinning like he owned the place. Cargo shorts, scraped knees, that smirk only 12-year-olds who'd never been caught doing anything truly bad could pull off. He was my cousin, technically. My dad's brother's kid. We were the same age, but I hadn't seen him in 2 years. "Dude," he said, "you look like you've seen a ghost. Just didn't expect visitors. Your grandpa told my dad you were back." Figured I'd stop by. He leaned in, dropped his voice. "Wanna see something cool?" Of course I said yes. We hiked through the brush behind the house, sneakers sliding on dead leaves and roots. The sun was hot, but the woods stayed cold somehow, like the shadows were thicker out there. Ben led the way, ducking branches, moving fast like he'd done this 100 times. "We built a fort near the ridge," he said. "Me and some of the neighborhood kids. My dad says to stay out of there, but he's full of crap. There's nothing out here but deer and ticks." The deeper we went, the quieter it got. No birds, no bugs. Just the sound of our footsteps and the occasional snap of a twig. I kept glancing behind me. I didn't know why. Then we saw it. There was something, someone, standing just off the path. A kid, maybe 10 or 11. Skinny, pale, wearing a baggy shirt that hung like it didn't belong to him. His skin looked gray. Not like he was sick, like he wasn't made right. His head was too big. His eyes, wide, glassy, too round, just stared at us. Ben froze. You know him." I shook my head. "No. Looks like he is lost." The kid stepped behind a tree. Ben started forward, but I grabbed his arm. And that's when it happened. The same figure appeared ahead of us, 20 feet down the trail. There was no way he could have moved that fast. No rustle, no footsteps. Just there. He was smiling. Not a friendly smile. It was too wide, too still, like a mask someone forgot to animate. Ben whispered, "What the hell?" But I didn't answer. Because I'd seen those eyes before. Not in real life, in dreams. The kind that wake you up sweaty, heart pounding, and you never remember why. Just the echo of something staring back at you. The wind picked up suddenly, whipping through the branches above. The boy was gone. I stood there, frozen. Ben grabbed my arm. "Let's go." We didn't run, but we didn't stop until we were out of the trees, back behind the house, gasping in the sun like we'd just surfaced from underwater. Neither of us said a word. That night, I took the drawing out again. I traced the letters with my finger. He told me not to come back. I didn't know who he was, but I had the sinking feeling I already had. It was the kind of morning that pretends to be peaceful. Sunlight came through the blinds in thin, sleepy lines. The smell of coffee drifted up from downstairs. If you didn't know better, you'd think this was just another summer day in the woods. But I knew better. Something about the way the house creaked when it shouldn't, the way the trees leaned like they were listening. That feeling from yesterday still clung to me like wet clothes. I stayed in bed longer than usual, hoping maybe it had all just been a weird dream. The drawing, the silent kid in the woods, that smile. But when I turned to check the drawer, the paper was still there, still folded neatly, still whispering something I couldn't quite understand. Then the knock came. 2 sharp taps, not the kind that waits to be invited. I opened the door, and there he was again, Ben. Same stupid grin. Same scraped knees. He was chewing on a piece of red licorice and holding a slingshot in the other hand like a badge of honor. "You coming?" he said, already turning to leave. I didn't answer right away. "I thought we weren't supposed to go back out there," I said, rubbing sleep from my eyes. Ben shrugged like rules didn't apply to people who lived in the woods. "Only if you're scared." I hated how fast that got under my skin. We cut through the side yard and slipped past the woodpile, careful not to make noise near Grandpa's work shed. The trail was narrower than I remembered, more overgrown. Ferns brushed against our ankles, and spiderwebs clung to our shirts. "This way," Ben said. "I'll show you the hunting fort. It's sick." I didn't like how the word hunting sounded out there. Surrounded by all that silence, he talked the whole time, like a distraction. Told me how he and some local kids had built a fort near the edge of what he called the ridge. Said it had old boards, some tarps, and a crate full of empty soda cans they used for target practice. I nodded, trying to act normal, but my chest was tight. Every few steps I swore I heard something, like breathing that didn't belong to us. Like soft footsteps behind soft footsteps, really just a bunch of rotting planks nailed between 3 trees, with a ripped tarp draped across the top like a roof. It was crooked, half collapsed. But it had the kind of charm only a 12-year-old could appreciate. "Cool, right?" Ben said proudly, climbing inside. "We used to camp here overnight. There's even a place to pee back there. Don't step in it." I forced a smile and followed him in, ducking under a beam. The air smelled like pine needles and old shoes. For a second, I almost let myself believe we were just 2 kids killing time in the woods. Then I felt it. That pressure. That same stillness from before. I turned. There was something watching us. At first, I couldn't see it clearly. Just a shape, half hidden behind the trees. A child. Or something trying to be. Its skin was the same, pale gray like ash. Its arms hung too low. Its head too round. It didn't move, just stood there, half behind a trunk, peeking. Ben saw it too. I heard his breath catch. "Is that the same kid from yesterday?" he whispered. I nodded slowly. "How'd he get all the way out here?" We both took a step forward. That was all it took. The shape vanished behind the tree. Ben cursed under his breath and started jogging after it. Ben, wait. Too late. He reached the tree. Looked behind it. Nothing. Then we both looked up. There it was, 20 feet ahead, standing in the middle of the trail, smiling again. This time I saw its eyes more clearly. They were not just wide, they were too still. No light reflected in them. They were the color of stale milk. Ben froze. "I don't like this," he said. "Let's go back." But I couldn't move. My feet were glued to the dirt. The creature tilted its head. That smile still hadn't moved. Not 1 inch. Then it blinked. Once, and I felt something move behind my ribs. I knew those eyes. They didn't just feel familiar. They aware. They belonged in the dream. The one I had when I was little. The one I could never remember clearly. Just pieces. Being lost in the woods. Someone walking with me. Something whispering my name. Ben pulled my sleeve hard. "Come on." We ran. Branches whipped our faces. Thorns scraped my legs, but I didn't stop. Not until we burst back into the clearing near Grandpa's house. Only then did I let myself look back. The trees behind us were empty. No movement. No sound. But I knew it was still there. That night, at dinner, Grandpa didn't say anything. He just looked at me. Looked too long. Like he was waiting for something. Or like he already knew what we'd seen. I almost asked him. I almost told him about the kid in the woods, about the way it moved. how it looked at me. But then I remembered his rule. Don't go past the ridge. He hadn't said it like a warning. He'd said it like a plea. I spent the rest of the evening in my room. The sun dipped behind the trees, and the shadows in the corners stretched long and sharp. I couldn't stop thinking about that face. That smile. Those eyes, not curious, not angry, just there, like it had been waiting, like it remembered me. And for the first time since I got here, I felt something heavier than fear. Recognition. Something out there knew who I was, and it hadn't forgotten. I should have listened to the way the forest went quiet. We barely stepped past the same bend where we saw that kid, or whatever that thing was, and already the trees felt too still, like the woods were holding their breath. But Ben didn't seem to care. He was marching ahead, slingshot dangling from one hand, already telling jokes that didn't land. Maybe he was just trying to shake it off. Maybe I was too. We didn't talk about what happened yesterday. Not really. Just gave each other that look, like we both knew what we saw but were afraid saying it out loud would make it real. So we kept moving, one foot in front of the other. Just two dumb kids in the Catskills doing exactly what we weren't supposed to do. The path narrowed fast, tangled with vines and broken limbs. At some point, it stopped being a trail at all. Ben pointed toward a clearing ahead. Said there was an old deer blind nearby. He wanted to show me. I nodded. Even though I didn't care about the deer blind, I was trying to keep it together, trying to ignore the way my gut twisted every time the shadows shifted wrong. But something about the air felt wrong. Like we were being funneled somewhere. We stepped through a break in the trees, and that's when it happened. The thing wasn't hiding this time. It didn't lurk or peek or wait. It came straight for us. Fast. It moved like it had too many joints, like it didn't care if the bones bent the wrong way. Hands and feet hitting the ground at the same time. Its body snapped forward in a motion that was part sprint, part crawl, part nightmare. And it didn't make a sound. Not at first, Ben screamed. He didn't wait to think. He just swung the slingshot hard. No rock loaded, just pure panic. The wooden handle cracked against the thing's jaw, or what looked like a jaw. That was when it screamed. It didn't sound human. Didn't sound an animal either. It was like metal being scraped from the inside out, like someone tried to scream through a throat full of rust. Then it leapt. Its fingers, long and wrong, raked down Ben's shoulder, ripping through fabric and skin like it was wet paper. I saw blood, not a lot. Just enough to make my brain go blank. Ben fell backwards, arms up, yelling something I couldn't hear through the roar in my ears. And I froze. I didn't move. I couldn't. It was like my body had shut off everything except my eyes. I stood there, staring, as that thing crouched low over Ben, one hand still twitching like it didn't know how to stop moving. Its eyes locked onto mine. I felt cold. I felt cold, a kind of cold that came from the inside out. That same memory again. Flashes of being small, lost, the woods swallowing me whole. Something reaching for me. Something reaching for me. Something telling me not to come back. I couldn't even blink. Then I felt it. The air behind me shifted. Heavier. Slower. Like gravity bent wrong. And something massive stepped out of the trees. I didn't hear it. I just felt it. The ridgewalker, he didn't charge, didn't growl. He simply appeared, towering behind me, filling the space like he'd always belonged there. His presence felt old, and not in a weak way, in a mountain way, in a storm that waits kind of way. The creature attacking Ben froze. It didn't turn. It didn't look. It just stopped, like it knew what was behind me. I felt a pressure against my back, huge, rough, warm. I was being lifted, not thrown, not yanked, lifted. Gently, my legs dangled in the air. My breath caught in my throat, and for the first time, I saw his face. Not clearly, There was too much shadow. But I saw the shape of his eyes. Not glowing. Not monstrous. Dark, deep, and full of something I didn't expect. Sadness. He looked at me like someone who knew me, not from stories or whispers, but from some deeper, older place. Like I was something he'd carried before, something he'd let go of once, even though he hadn't wanted to. Then he set me down. Not a shove, not a drop. He lowered me to the ground, like I was something fragile. The other thing, the one with the pale skin and twisted limbs, snarled. It backed away from Ben, crouching, baring its teeth like an animal backed into a corner. And then, from somewhere behind the trees, a second figure appeared. This one was worse. Bigger. Hunched. Fur matted with mud and bark. Claws longer, thicker. Eyes brighter, angrier. The screecher. It charged. Straight for Ben. Straight for Ben. Ben tried to crawl away, blood trailing behind him in dark streaks. Before the thing could reach him, the Ridgewalker moved. Faster than I thought something that size could move. He slammed into the creature mid-stride. The impact shook the clearing, sent leaves and dirt flying. There was no hesitation. The Ridgewalker pushed it back, shoving it with both arms, pinning it to the earth. They struggled, claws flashing, snarls cracking through the silence. The forest seemed to flinch around them. And then he did something I didn't expect. He didn't attack. He roared, a sound that didn't sound angry. It sounded commanding. It vibrated in my ribs, made my teeth ache. The screecher, went still beneath him. It didn't surrender. It paused, like it was listening. For a second, nothing moved. Then the Ridgewalker turned to me. His massive hand reached out, not toward me, but past me, pointing toward the path, the way out. He didn't speak. He didn't need to. The message was clear. Go. I scrambled to Ben, hooked my arm under his, started dragging him. He was heavier than I expected, but adrenaline makes kids strong. He groaned, muttering something through gritted teeth. I just kept moving. Behind me, I could hear the screecher snarling again. I didn't turn to look. I didn't want to see how that ended. We broke through the tree line near Grandpa's shed, both of us panting, shaking, bleeding. Ben collapsed into the dirt. I turned back once. The woods were still, too still, like something was watching, or choosing not to follow. That night I couldn't sleep. I sat by the window, staring at the dark ridge just beyond the backyard. I kept thinking about that moment. The Ridgewalker lifting me. The look in his eyes. The way he didn't hurt the other creature, only stopped it. That kind of protection doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from knowing, from remembering, from something that had already happened once before. And for the first time, I started to wonder if this wasn't the first time I'd been saved out there. If maybe, a long time ago, I'd already been carried out of those woods, and just didn't remember. He didn't roar when he lifted me. He didn't even breathe hard. Just placed one massive hand against my chest like someone checking to see if a heart still beat beneath the ribs. And in that moment, I stopped being scared. I don't know why. Maybe it was the way he looked at me. Not like prey, not even like a kid, but like something he recognized, something that belonged to him in a way I didn't understand. The forest around us was a blur. I only remember the feel of his palm. Coarse, warm, too big to belong to anything human. It stayed there just a second longer than it needed to, resting against the center of my forehead, not pressing, not hurting, just like he was remembering something, or trying to give something back. Then he let go. I staggered back, dizzy for a split second like my balance didn't know which way was up. Ben groaned behind me, still bleeding, trying to sit up, but too weak. And that's when everything changed. From somewhere just beyond the tree line, the sound cut through the woods like a blade, high, Sharp. A scream, but not from anything you'd call human. The trees shivered. Birds exploded from the branches. And I saw it. Charging through the brush, taller than the ridgewalker. Limbs thick with muscle and rage. Its head was sloped low, jaw wide, with tusk-like teeth curving out from a mouth that shouldn't have been able to make that sound. The screecher. It hit the clearing like a storm. Didn't hesitate. Didn't slow. It barreled straight for Ben, eyes blazing with something ancient and violent. I took one step forward and shouted his name, just a whisper at first. My throat locked up. Then louder. Ben! But before I could move, the ridgewalker was already between us. He didn't growl this time. He didn't roar. He collided with the screecher like two mountains tearing into each other. The sound was sickening. Bone hitting bone. Claws raking bark and flesh. I didn't know what side to root for. I didn't even know if there were sides. The screecher was wild, out of control. Its screams like nails on a chalkboard stretched across miles. But the ridgewalker, he didn't scream. He held it down, arms locked like a wall, pushing it back, restraining it. I saw his face in flashes between the chaos. Eyes clenched tight, teeth bared. Not in anger, but an effort. Like this wasn't a fight. It was a rescue. The screecher thrashed under him. Fought like something protecting its own. And then something inside me cracked. I understood. This wasn't an attack. This was a family. The screecher wasn't trying to hurt Ben out of hate. It was trying to get to something, maybe even to the pale thing from before. Maybe that was its child. And the ridgewalker. He wasn't just saving us. He was stopping a war. He growled then. Low. Guttural. Deep enough to rattle the leaves around us. The screecher jerked like it had been struck. Muscles stiffening. Claws digging into the dirt. For a split second, the woods went still again. Their eyes locked. The ridgewalker didn't blink. He didn't push. He held. Like a father holding a child in the middle of a tantrum. Not out of fear, but love. And then the screecher collapsed. Not dead, not unconscious, just spent. Its head hung low, chest heaving like a dog caught in the cold. I saw its eyes then, yellow, wild, but not empty. They were grieving. The ridgewalker slowly looked at me, his arms still locked around the screecher's shoulders. He didn't speak. Of course he didn't. But I understood what he meant. Go. Take the boy. Leave this place. I turned to Ben. He was sitting now, hands pressed to the wound on his arm, staring like he was watching some movie too unreal to believe. I helped him up, careful not to touch the raw parts. Together, we backed away. The forest didn't stop us. Neither did they. They stayed where they were. Still locked together like two parts of the same nightmare. Or maybe the same memory. We didn't speak. Not then. Not on the way back. The trees closed behind us with every step. But they didn't feel as heavy anymore. When we reached the edge of the clearing behind Grandpa's house, I finally looked back. They were gone. No footprints. No broken branches. Just wind. Ben leaned against me, breathing hard. I could feel his heart pounding through his jacket. I wasn't sure if it was the pain or the truth, because whatever we thought we knew about monsters, it wasn't the full story. And somehow, I knew this wasn't the end. Just the part where the real story begins. We didn't even make it to the porch before Grandpa came storming out the door. His boots hit the steps like thunder. The screen door slammed shut behind him, and for a second, I thought maybe he'd hug us, or ask if we were okay. But he didn't. His face was carved out of stone. "Where the hell were you?" he snapped, voice low and hard. Ben tried to speak, but Grandpa pointed straight at the blood on his shirt. "You think this is a game?" You think I'm just some old fool you can ignore? I opened my mouth, but nothing came out. My throat felt locked. Ben winced beside me, his hand still pressed against the torn skin near his shoulder, the dried blood already cracking. He looked pale and shaky, like his legs might give out. Still, Grandpa didn't move to help him. Didn't ask what happened. He just looked at us both like we'd crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed. We got dragged inside. Sat down. The lecture came fast, sharp, full of words like reckless, dangerous, irresponsible. He didn't ask about the forest. He didn't ask what we saw. It was like he already knew. But didn't want it said out loud. Saying it would make it real, and real was worse than anything. Ben's dad came later to pick him up. He didn't ask questions either. Just nodded at Grandpa, threw a look our way, and muttered something about stitches. Ben didn't say goodbye, didn't look at me. He just climbed into the truck and drove off with his arm in a sling, eyes staring dead ahead. The silence that followed was thick. That kind of silence that fills a house and sits in the corners like dust. I went upstairs. My limbs were sore, like I'd been in a fight. My chest still burned where the Ridgewalker's hand had pressed against me. I sat by the window for hours, just staring at the line of trees, wondering if they were staring back. That night, the dream came again, but this time it was different. In the dream, I was smaller. 4, maybe 5. I was barefoot, wandering the woods. The trees looked taller than they do now. The light was golden, like late afternoon, but the world felt off, too quiet. I remember falling, my knee hitting a rock, and crying. Not from the pain, from something else. I didn't know where I was. And then a shape stepped out from the brush, towering, not loud, not fast, just there. He knelt in front of me. He didn't speak. But I remember his hand, huge, clawed, soft in a way I didn't expect, wrapping gently around mine, and we walked. Out of the woods, back to the edge of the ravine, where lights flickered and people shouted. In the dream, I turned around, looked up at him. I wanted to speak, but my mouth was full of dirt. He knelt again, touched my forehead. Then he was gone. I woke up shaking. The house was still dark. Just past 3 in the morning. I went downstairs. The floorboards creaked under my weight, the way they always did. I thought Grandpa would be asleep, but he was sitting in the kitchen, in the glow of the refrigerator light, staring at nothing with a glass of something in his hand. He didn't flinch when I walked in. He didn't look at me right away either. You remember anything? He asked. Voice hoarse. I didn't answer. Just stood there, the floor cold under my feet. He sipped his drink. When you were 4, he said, you went missing. I knew this already. Not the whole story, but pieces of it. Whispers between relatives. A photo in a drawer I wasn't supposed to find. The police report my mom once almost threw out but didn't. You were gone 2 days, he continued. No footprints, no trail, nothing. We thought. He stopped. Cleared his throat. Then one morning you were just there, standing by the riverbank like nothing happened, staring at the trees. I swallowed hard. You didn't speak for 3 weeks. Wouldn't eat, wouldn't cry, wouldn't smile. I pulled the chair out and sat across from him. You remember the first thing you said when you finally did? I didn't. He looked at me now, finally, and his eyes weren't angry anymore. They were scared. You said he told me not to come back. My breath caught. It wasn't just the words. It was the way he said them, like they'd been burned into his memory, playing on repeat every night since. I thought about the drawing, the handwriting, the way that sentence had curled along the bottom like a warning. Hey, Grandpa didn't answer. Just stared out the window. The trees rustled in the distance like something had brushed them gently. Not wind, not animal. Just presence. I stood slowly and went back upstairs. But sleep didn't come. Not that night. Not after that. There was something about that memory. Mine. His. Whatever it was. That made everything click. That pale thing in the woods. The screecher. The ridgevalker. They weren't just part of this summer. They were part of me. Of something older. Something I'd been pulled into when I was too young to understand. And maybe had never really escaped. I kept thinking about the way he looked at me. That sadness. That strange gentleness beneath all that size and strength. And I started to wonder, what if he didn't tell me not to come back out of anger? What if it was to protect me? And now I had come back. And something out there remembered. The next day, I didn't go outside. I didn't eat much. I just sat at the desk in my room with a blank sheet of paper in front of me. And I drew. Not from imagination, not from fear. From memory. I drew the forest, the trees bent like arches, the ravine, the shape stepping out of the shadows, eyes not glowing but deep, watching. And I didn't stop, because something inside me had woken up. Not fear, not dread, recognition, like something was pulling me forward, calling me back. Ben showed up 2 days later with gauze still taped to his shoulder and a nervous laugh that didn't fool me. He walked like he'd practiced, not limping. Like his body still remembered what his mouth refused to say. He brought 2 kids with him. Jordan and Mike, both local. Older by a year or 2. But with that same reckless shine in their eyes that boys wear when they think nothing can touch them. They came with backpacks, flashlights, a GoPro, and a plan. I didn't want to go. Everything in me said no. Said it with a whisper in my stomach, a tightening behind my ribs. But I followed anyway, not because I was brave, because I knew if I didn't, they'd go without me. And if something happened again, if that thing came back, I wouldn't be there to stop it, or witness it, or understand it. They wanted footage, proof. Ben said it could go viral. Said people would believe us if we got it on camera. Said this time, they'd be ready. They weren't. We left just before dusk, slipping through the trees like shadows. The woods swallowed us fast. The trail narrowed and twisted, every branch bending like it knew we shouldn't be there. Jordan kept cracking jokes. Mike swung a stick at every fern that moved. I walked at the back, watching the silence creep in around their noise like fog waiting to choke them. After an hour, we reached it. It wasn't marked on any map. No blaze on the trees. No hint it existed unless you already knew where to look. The trees grew closer here, twisting in toward each other like they were hiding something between their trunks. The air shifted too. Heavier, thicker, like stepping into a different kind of forest. One that hadn't forgotten what walked inside it. And then we saw the dome. It wasn't built. It wasn't made. It had grown. Branches arched overhead, woven together in impossible shapes, like something enormous had bent them with careful hands. The canopy formed a shell, a giant, living dome maybe 20 feet wide, hollowed at the center like a nest. There were no cut marks, no broken limbs, just tension, natural and unnatural at once. We stepped inside. Our flashlights flicked over bark walls and roots that curled up from the earth like ribs. The air was warm, but not in a comforting way. It felt lived in, breathing. The floor was soft with moss, dark and wet. Ben whispered, "You think they sleep here?" Nobody answered. Mike turned the camera on. Its red light blinked. That's when the sound came, not loud. Not close, just a scrape. Long and slow. From somewhere outside the dome, like claws over bark. Or something dragging itself through leaves that didn't want to move. The jokes stopped. Even Jordan shut up. Another sound. Closer this time. A wet exhale. We spun toward the opening, flashlights dancing. The trees were still, but something was wrong. No wind, no night bugs, no birds, just the quiet. Pressing, waiting, and then it came. A screecher. It didn't creep this time. It didn't pause. It tore through the trees like a shot, its body hunched and raw, muscles twitching, limbs longer than they should be. Its eyes locked on us, and the sound it made, That sound wasn't from lungs. It came from the bones, a shriek so high it made my spine shake. Mike screamed first, dropped the camera, ran. Jordan followed, crashing into the brush like a deer that knew it wouldn't outrun the fire. Ben stood frozen. I grabbed his arm. The screecher charged. We ran. I didn't look back, not once. Branches sliced my arms. Mud sucked at my shoes. I kept hearing it behind us, slamming into trees, ripping through brush. It wasn't hunting. It was chasing. I lost sight of the others fast. Just me and Ben, crashing through the dark, the world spinning in flashes of panic and breath. Then Ben fell. Hard. His yell was sharp, cut short by a thud. I turned, slid to my knees, grabbed at his jacket. His ankle twisted. He couldn't walk. The forest split behind us, and there it was, standing just beyond the last tree, breathing heavy, shoulders heaving. Its mouth opened wide, teeth slick and curved like broken antlers. Its gaze flicked from me to Ben, then back again. I did the only thing I could. I screamed, not in fear, in memory. I screamed his name, the one I hadn't said out loud since I was 4. The one I hadn't told anyone. Ridgewalker. The trees didn't move. The shadows didn't shift. But I felt him. The air bent behind me. The cold pulled back like a curtain. And then he was there. Bigger than I remembered. Darker. More real. He stepped between us and the screecher. Not to fight, not to threaten. Just stood. The screecher flinched. It snarled, paced. But it didn't come closer, and then, slowly it backed away. Or maybe me. Then it vanished, swallowed by the woods that had given it life. Ben coughed beside me. He was crying now. Soft. Scared. Human. Even looked up at the Ridgewalker. He didn't move, didn't blink, like someone who carried my name once. Then he turned and walked into the dark. No sound, no goodbye. Just gone. The trees filled the silence again, but they didn't feel the same. They felt lighter. Or maybe I did. I helped Ben up. Got us home. No one believed our story. They called it a bear attack. Said we were lucky. Said kids make things up to make sense of trauma. But I know what we saw. What we were spared. And what's still out there, waiting, watching. Because this story wasn't done. Not yet. The woods weren't quiet anymore. Even from the porch I could feel it. That shift in the trees. Like they were leaning in, listening for something. The air hung too still, too thick. Not windless. Breathless. Like the whole ridge was holding itself tight, waiting to snap. And I knew. It wasn't over. Ben was still in bed, ankle bandaged, feverish. He barely spoke. When he did, it was nonsense. Fragments of the screecher's scream. The blur of fur and claws. The way Ridgewalker appeared like gravity bending around him. He'd seen too much. More than he could hold. I sat next to him, eyes fixed on the window. And when the first noise came, a dry crack from the tree line, I didn't wait. I ran. The forest swallowed me without hesitation. I don't even remember the path. My legs moved on instinct. Each branch that snapped behind me only made me go faster. It was the kind of panic that felt almost holy. I didn't stop. Not until I saw it again. The dome. It was darker now. The vines curled tighter around the frame. The air inside shimmered with a kind of tension I couldn't name. And standing at its edge, blocking the entrance like it owned the breath of the place, was the screecher. Its head tilted, slow and unnatural. It saw me, and this time, it didn't pause. It charged. I froze. Every part of me locked. My chest caved in like it forgot how to hold air. I wanted to run, to scream, to throw myself sideways, but my feet were rooted. Like the dirt knew this was where I was meant to be. The screecher's eyes were wide, unblinking, gleaming with the kind of rage that didn't come from hate. It came from grief. It leapt, and I braced for the end. But he was there. Ridgevalker hit it midair, and the forest exploded around us. Bark shattered. Dust shot up in waves. The ground shook so hard I dropped to my knees. I couldn't see anything. Just motion. Limbs twisted. Shadows slammed into each other, over and over. It was like watching storms fight. One screamed, one roared. The air cracked like it couldn't take the sound of them. They broke through the dome wall, smashing into trees. Ridgevalker moved like he wasn't bound by bone. His strength was terrifying, calculated, not wild. But the screecher wasn't giving up. It clawed. It bit. It cried. Not with words. Not with anything I could translate, but I heard it. The way you hear something inside your own ribs. A sound like something losing the only thing it had left. A sound that breaks things inside you. I stood slowly, legs trembling. My ears rang. The world spun, but I made myself walk closer, past the broken roots, past the shadows that still trembled from the impact, closer until I could see them both. Ridgevalker holding the screecher against the base of a tree, not pinning, not punishing. Embracing. The screecher fought for a second longer, then it slumped. Its chest heaved. Blood matted its fur. One of its claws reached forward, not to strike, to grip. They stayed that way for a long, breathless stretch of time. Then Ridgevalker looked at me. His face changed something in me. There was no anger, no threat, just knowing. The kind of look someone gives you when they've lived too long, lost too much, and still believe there's something worth saving. His arms wrapped tighter around the screecher's frame, and with one deep breath, he rose. He carried it, not like prey, not like an enemy, like family. He stepped past me. Each footfall felt like thunder muffled under moss. I didn't follow. I didn't speak. I just watched as the two of them disappeared into the ridge. Shadows melting into other shadows, swallowed like they'd never been there. The forest didn't close behind them. It just exhaled. I stood in the silence, the kind that only comes after a truth has passed through you. Like a river that dragged something loose inside you on its way out. My legs finally gave out, and I sat on the cold earth, hands gripping dirt. I didn't cry. I didn't shake. I just felt small. And not in a bad way. In the way that makes you realize this world is so much older than you are. So much deeper. I don't know how long I sat there. But eventually, I got up. I walked home under a sky that didn't feel as wide anymore. It felt close. Protective. Ben was asleep when I got back. Grandpa didn't ask where I'd been. He just nodded once from the porch, cigarette burning low between his fingers. I nodded back. Something had ended, but nothing was over. And I knew, without a doubt, that Ridgevalker hadn't just saved us. He'd said goodbye. The cops said it was a bear. Too many scratch marks. Too much blood. No one really saw what happened, they said. Kids running scared through the woods, adrenaline and shadows turning normal things into monsters. The paramedics checked Ben out again. Said his ankle would heal fine, but the cut along his ribs would scar. He didn't speak much. Didn't argue with the story. Neither did I. The truth wouldn't matter to them. It only mattered to us. The day after, reporters showed up near the trailhead. One of them shoved a mic at me while Grandpa stood behind me like a granite wall. I didn't say a word. The guy finally gave up, muttering something about local hysteria. And unsupervised kids. We watched him pack his van and leave with the others. They didn't look back. The town went quiet after that. People stopped asking. It was easier to believe the version with teeth they could explain. Easier to sleep at night, pretending it wasn't something older. Something that watched from beyond the tree line. Something that once knew your name. I didn't go near the woods again. Not for the rest of that summer. I spent most days at the little desk in the corner of my room. The one beneath the window. That window overlooked the ridge. I kept the blinds open now, even at night. I don't know why. Part of me expected to see something again. Part of me hoped I wouldn't, but I kept drawing. I drew the screecher, not the way it had looked when it attacked. More like how it looked afterward. Quiet, broken, almost grieving. I drew Ridgewalker too, over and over, not always full form. Sometimes just the curve of a shoulder, or the silhouette of his hand, always from memory. But the details stayed sharp, like I'd etched them into me that night. The day Mom came to pick me up, the sky was clear. She stepped out of the car in sunglasses, hair tied back, tired eyes pretending not to be. She hugged me longer than usual. Tighter. Her hand ran through my hair like she was searching for something she hadn't asked me to keep safe. She didn't mention the news. Didn't ask what really happened. Just said, "You ready?" I nodded. Grabbed my bag. Grandpa stood by the fence, arms folded, that familiar look on his face. Like he knew everything I wouldn't say. He didn't hug me either, but I saw it in his eyes. Pride mixed with worry. Like maybe he'd carried this silence too long, and now it belonged to both of us. I looked back one last time as we pulled away. The woods stood still, but not empty. Something watched, not in a threatening way, just aware. I didn't wave. Didn't need to. The ride home was quiet. I watched the trees turn to open fields, then to towns with traffic lights and billboards. The further we got from the ridge, the more the air felt thin, like I was stepping out of something old and sacred into something loud and shallow. My mom's hand reached over and found mine at some point. She didn't say anything, but she didn't let go. The first day back at school, I kept to myself. Everything felt distant, like I was walking through someone else's life. Kids talked about summer camp, vacations, video games. Nobody mentioned what happened in the Catskills, not even Ben. He came back a week later, still limping a little, but acting like nothing had changed. We didn't talk about the screecher, or Ridgewalker, or the dome. But we'd look at each other sometimes, long enough to know we weren't forgetting. The art show at school came in October. Our homeroom teacher made us each pick one piece to put on display. I stared at my sketchbook for a long time, flipping through page after page. Some of the drawings were too raw, too personal, some too strange. But one stood out. Ridgewalker, drawn in charcoal, the forest rising behind him like cathedral walls. His arms stretched wide. Not threatening, not violent, just open, protective, like a parent reaching out not to hold you back, but to shield you from what comes next. Behind him, barely visible unless you looked close, was a boy. Small, alone, but not afraid. But someone stood between him and the dark. I framed it, hung it on the classroom wall. The night of the exhibition, kids laughed and dragged their parents through rows of paintings and poems. Nobody stopped at mine for long. Just a glance, a few confused tilts of the head. But that was okay. It wasn't for them. Later, after the crowd thinned out and the hallway emptied, I found myself standing in front of it alone. Just me, Ridgewalker, and the space between us. And I realized something. He'd never trapped me. He'd protected me. He didn't pull me out of the woods to claim me. He did it so I could keep going. So I could grow up and remember. Not just the fear, but the grace in something wild choosing mercy. And I'd come back, even after everything, even when I'd promised not to. But maybe that's why he let me leave again. Because sometimes, coming back is the only way to really leave. I don't know if I'll ever see him again, but I know he's still out there. Somewhere beyond the ridge, watching, waiting. And that, for now, is enough. Sometimes the wilderness isn't just a place, it's a feeling. a vast, quiet stretch of truth that lives inside us, tucked between memory and instinct. It's where the things we fear most often turn out to be the parts of ourselves we've tried hardest to forget. And it's where, if we're willing to look closely enough, we might find that not everything in the dark is waiting to harm us. Some of it is simply waiting to be understood. There are moments in life that don't announce themselves. They arrive like a sudden wind through the trees, soft, unseen, but strong enough to change the path you're walking. They remind us that not all protection comes with a warning, and not all guardians look like the stories told to comfort children. Sometimes, what saves us doesn't speak our language. Sometimes, it doesn't speak at all, but it sees us, and that's enough. This story was never about fear. It was about memory. About what lingers in the quiet after something has passed through you. It was about the unseen ways we're held, the weight of silence when words aren't enough, and the invisible threads that bind us to the places and moments we thought we left behind. Some things call to us because they never truly let us go. Some truths only find us when we stop trying to explain them. We all carry something with us. A shape in the trees, a dream we can't quite name, a feeling that maybe, just maybe, we've been protected more times than we'll ever know. And when the world feels too loud, or too sharp, or too far from anything we can trust, it helps to remember that not every story ends in fear. Some end in understanding. And in that understanding, we begin to see ourselves differently, not just as survivors of what we've seen, but as witnesses to something ancient, something sacred, something that asks nothing of us except to remember. Thank you for walking this path with me, for listening, not just to the words, but to the silence between them. If this story touched something in you, I hope you'll share your thoughts in the comments below. I'd love to know what stayed with you. And if you haven't already, feel free to subscribe and follow along. There are more stories waiting beyond the ridge. We'll meet there someday.